and welcome to my channel. For this first video, I thought I'd do 33 books that I've read so far in 2023. Okay, so I've got my iPad here with my Goodreads list open. I use Goodreads to keep track of all my reads, and I usually leave a review out of 5 stars. I don't usually write anything, so it makes it harder for me to remember what I actually read. But usually when I take a look at the book covers, I remember some things. Right, so for this year, my little challenge was 100 books originally, but we're not going well. So far I've read 33 and it's May, so I did change the goal to 75 for now, but hopefully we'll make it a bit further. So the first book I read was It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. Apologies if I'm pronouncing any names wrong. So this book was a romance novel, I think. It was okay. I gave it a 3-star rating. For me, 5-star is when it really makes me feel something. So it makes me cry, it makes me laugh out loud. This one didn't do that. 4 stars, it didn't quite make it, but 3 seemed like it was a good book. I might not read it again. Then I read One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus. I don't know if that's right. This was a bit different. It was a bit of a mystery, is that right? I'm not sure what the genres are for these, but I've read I've read One of Us is Lying, and then the second book of that, One of Us is Next. I've rated both of them 4 stars. They were good, but I hope for a bit more, just a bit more. And then I read from the same author, Two Can Keep a Secret. I've also rated that 4 stars. She has good books, but I didn't feel like yeah. And then I read You'll Be the Death of Me by the same author. I rated that 3 stars because I didn't quite feel it was as good as the others, but I could have just been bored at that time. And then The Cousins was the last book from her, and I rated that 4 stars again. Next, I read 2 books from Eve Ainsworth, which were really short books. It was just kind of getting me out of a little bit of a slump. One of them was Because of You, which I rated 3 stars, and Just Another Little Lie, which also 3 stars. So both of these books, I feel like it wasn't for me. I feel like it was a good book, but with my age, I feel like I'm a bit too old for that kind of mentality. But it is a good book, so that's why I rated that. And then I read Lying About Last Summer by Sue Wallman. I rated that 3 stars. I've read another book from her, I'll pop it up here, a few years back, and I remember enjoying that one, so I did want to read this for a while. It's been on my list, and I finally read it, and it wasn't that much of a big deal. It was a good book, but it didn't hook me in as the other one did. And then I read It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover, so part 2 to It Ends With Us. Again, 3 stars. It was okay. Then I read The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. Yeah, I don't know how you say that name. But I rated that 3 stars, but thinking back, I think it's a 4 or a 5-star, because you know when you read a book and you finish it and you're like, yeah, okay, that was okay. But now, a few months later, I'm like, I've been constantly thinking about that book, so it must have been good. So I think that's a 4 or 5-star. And then I read by S.J. Watson, Before I Go to Sleep. 4 stars. Oh yes, I know this one. I've been thinking about this one too. Another interesting book. So both this one and The Silent Patient are not romance books, but it has an element of romance in them. But it just has a different vibe and a bit of a psychological thriller, I think it's called. And it was definitely interesting. Then I read Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. Again, a romance book. I think it's a romance book. Oh, a novel, okay. I rated it 3 stars. I feel like in the past, when I started out reading Colleen Hoover, I really enjoyed it because I was new to her writing, and I was like, oh, this is it. But now when I read it, it's good, and it gets me reading, you know, but I don't feel those extreme emotions anymore. Then I read the 3 Fifty Shades books, which was interesting. 50 Shades of Grey, I rated 4 stars. To be honest, I did like that. It was very smutty, but it had good characters, you know. 50 Shades Darker, I rated 3 stars. I was a bit disappointed because the whole story just seemed to slow down and it seemed a bit repetitive, but it was still a good book. And then 50 Shades Freed, I rated 4 stars. That's that. So the next book I read is This Is Not Forgiveness by I don't know her name. I rated that 3 stars. It was one of those books I just found free from my university's library, and the plot sounded interesting and it was okay, but not the best. Then I read Sense and Sensibility by Renee George. This was a random find in the Amazon library, another free one, and it was something. It was a bit strange, but I rated it 3 stars, so it was good to an extent. Then I read The Text, a short story by Claire Douglas. I rated it 2 stars. I remember some of it, but I can't remember. I remember the star, but I can't remember how it ended. But if I rated it 2 stars, it mustn't have been that good. I've got a bunch of Life in the United Kingdom books here. Firstly, A Practical Guide to Living in the UK, and then I've got A Guide for New Residents and The Official Study Guide, because I'm attempting to get the British citizenship done this year, so that was a prep in that. And then I read The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood, which I rated 5 stars. That was the first 5-star book this year, and honestly, I was hooked. And the feels were there, and it was great. And I can't wait to read more from Ali Hazelwood because it seems to be very good. Then I read Grey, which is the 50 Shades books, but told from Christian's point of view. I rated it 2 stars, and that kind of threw me off from reading Darker and Freed, so the other 2 books from his point of view. I don't know why, I just think I wasn't in the mood for it. I feel like I could go back to it, but not yet. Not yet. Compared to like the very first book, I feel like it was not good. Yeah. Then I read Cloud Busting by Mallory Blakeman. I rated this 3 stars, so this was a bit of a different book. It was like different styles of poetry, and the boy was telling a whole story about like bullying and this other boy, and it was it was not what I would usually read in terms of like poetry, but I honestly did not know it until I opened the book. But it was actually okay. I actually liked the flow of the story within like different kinds of poems, so I recommend. And then I read Sleeping with a Psychopath by Carolyn Woods. Right, this one I rated 3 stars, but I think it deserves a 4 or 5 because I've been thinking about it ever since. And I've been telling people about it to like check this out, go and read this because it's amazing. I like that it was her story, but as well as that, she linked in actual like researched definitions of psychopaths and traits, and I'm studying psychology at the moment at university, so it just got me hooked. Then I read The Guest List by Lucy Foley. I rated it 4 stars. Yeah, I did not know how this was gonna end. I was guessing all the way through and I did not get it right. So that was a fun read. Then I read Find Layla by Meg Ellison. Oh yes. I rated it 3 stars. It was a good read, but it's a good book. But again, like with Eve Ainsworth, yeah, like with her books, I feel like I read it a bit too late. If I would have read this when I was in high school, I would have been like loving it and relating to it a lot more. But reading it with an adult mind, I feel like it was a bit not my kind of vibe. But I get how it's a good book. Then I read a bit of a non-fiction book called Honest by Millie Evans, which was insightful. I rated it 3 stars. Again, it was insightful, but I already knew a lot of it. Maybe this one, I recommend it reading earlier. I feel like I was, no, actually no. I feel like I was in a good position to read it now. Because some things I wouldn't have understood back in high school, but at the same time, it does have a kind of, talking to a kid vibe, which it was okay. But yeah, it's definitely something that is really out there with what she's talking about, how she's talking, and how open she is about things. And I definitely think there should be a lot more talk about sex, relationships, bodies, the things she talks about. And everyone should be educated in that way. So I definitely recommend. It was a bit boring for me. That's it. Then I read Set on You by Amy Lee. It was interesting. I rated it 4 stars. I feel like, yeah, I do still think about it, but the way the characters were described, I could never get a clear picture in my mind of what they look like, which is really stupid because she did describe the characters well, but for some reason I kept like, when you're reading and you got a character's talking and you try and picture it in your mind, and I just kept changing them, like, yeah, the main characters, but yeah, it's okay. It was a really good book. I like the storyline. I like the influence of plot to it, and yeah, definitely recommend. Right, this book. So House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. 5 stars, definitely. Her books are just mental. I've read Throne of Glass and ACOTAR not a lot of years back, and I knew this book was coming at that time, but I was like, no, I'm gonna wait it out until all the books are out. And then this year I was like, oh, I'm getting back into reading, I'll check it out. And then after I read the first book, that's when I realised that the third one was not out yet. And now I'm like waiting to read the second one, but kind of trying to drag it out in hopes of not having to wait as long for the third book. This was definitely a really good introduction to a new world. It was an amazing new world. I loved it. I loved the characters. And it kind of had... So usually her books with like Throne of Glass and ACOTAR, I always felt that when the book ended, there was just a lot more to talk about. And although it had that a bit here, it also kind of had that happy ending. Not even a happy ending. It was a happy ending, but I feel like it was a kind of closure that I usually didn't get from her other books. And it does want to make me read on more, because obviously there is a lot of stuff unexplained. But at the same time, I'm okay with waiting now. So that's why I was like, it's okay. I can drag out the second book, and I'm a bit scared that the second one really hooks me in and I get very excited for the third one. Then I read, I'm a bit late with this one, but I read The Geek Girl by Holly Smale. Yeah. So I remember when this was like a big hype. I remember when this came out and I really wanted to read it at the time, and I didn't. And I kind of fell behind with the whole hype. And then it came up on my library app. It's called BorrowBox, so I can access my my local library's online ebooks page, and it came up on there, and I was like, oh, I remember this, and I thought, why not? Again, I rated it 2 stars, which does seem bad. I just didn't vibe with it. I didn't vibe. I feel like if I would have read it when it came out, I might have liked it a bit more. But yeah, I'm not at high school at the moment anymore, so I guess that element has gone, the relatability, and I just didn't like the characters. I'm sorry, I just couldn't get... I get how they could be likable, but personally I just didn't connect with them as I feel like I should have. And then lastly, for this video, I read One Perfect Summer by Paige Toon. So this one, I rated 3 stars, but I feel like it could be a 4, because, yeah, I have only read it recently, but I have been thinking about it, and I can't seem to forget it yet. So this one was... What I really liked about this one is it wasn't just one kind of era, one section, one part of the character's life. It was from this one summer all the way to like her adulthood, big life changes, events, and like getting back together, which, could you call that a second chance romance? Maybe. But anyway, yeah, it was something I really liked. It's not something I've read before, where it's like it really takes like a lifetime in just one book, which was nice. It was really nice. it was a very, as much as it had the angst and things to it, I really like the kind of comfort of like, you know, friendships and family, and yeah, I recommend it. I'm sorry, I'm trying not to spoil anything. But yeah, that's it for now. Oh, for my 34th book, I'm reading X's and O's. Is that what it's called? Oh, I haven't put it on here yet. I think it's called X's and O's, by the same person who wrote Set on You. I think it's like his second book to that, but also can be read as a standalone. Yeah, I'm reading that. I haven't got into it yet properly, so I can't really say anything about that yet. I'm also reading Cuckoo Song by... Yeah, I can't say their name, I'm sorry. I'll put them up here anyway. But yeah, I've been dragging this out. I honestly don't like it so far. I'm about 50% through, and I'm not really liking it. I think it's a bit of an older style writing, or the setting is a bit older, and I'm just not a fan of those. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's like really well written, but sometimes it just doesn't click with me. And I have been wanting to DNF this for the past 2 months, but at the same time I'm pushing through, and just hoping for the best, really. Yeah, oh, and I'm listening to the audiobook of Put a Wet Paper Towel on It by the two Mr. P's. It's a non-fiction book about UK primary schools, and I found that an interesting twist. It's not something I've read before. And then I also been wanting to get into audiobooks for a while, but I never clicked with them. So I started like listening to something, and it just wouldn't go in the same way as when I read it. But with this one, because it's like originally from a podcast, so they tell it as if it wasn't a podcast as they like read through it in the audiobook. And I kind of like that. So maybe non-fiction books will be my audiobook era. I'm not sure, but I'm about 40% through that. So yeah. And I've got 213 on my want to read list on Goodreads now, so a long way to go, but there's plenty of books out there to read. So yeah. Well, I think that's a wrap for now. So hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe, bye!